Yeah, Kelly, hi. It's been the UK. That's why we're in the UK talking about sort of the same thing. Obviously, that was before the war. That was back in November. I know that 15% does not sound like a lot, but I want you to put that into perspective. I mean, take 15% of a year. Effectively, that is, what, 6 weeks or a month and a half of total energy consumption that countries in the EU are going to be voluntarily asked to pull back on. 15%. I mean, that is actually a massive number. And I gave sort of the air quotes with voluntary, Kelly, because there's also a provision in the proposal where they would basically say you have to do it, that they could actually force it if this proposal passes. So it may not be as voluntary as some think. And even a 15% cut, you could maybe shave, what, a 1.5% off GDP. The European economy, Kelly, is as big as America. Take 1.5% off the American economy, you're going to see corporate earnings fall, and you could very well see the stock market fall. We should start maybe getting some flow data tomorrow as early as 6 a.m. Berlin time. It may be the market event, really not of the week, but of the month, and one of the key events of the year.
Brian, the numbers are so shocking when we look at some of the inflation data. It's pretty terrifying when you read about what could happen going into the winter. What's it like in terms of the mood when you speak with people there? That's what I'm most curious about. Are all of these headlines overblowing the real danger on the ground, or are people really nervous?
I mean, well, people here in Frankfurt, right, there's some dancing going on. I mean, they're trying to say they're not nervous, but they are nervous. I mean, the guys at the steel mill that we talked to, we didn't put them on camera, but we had plenty of time. We were at the steel mill in Lagerfeld earlier today. Of course they're worried. This is their career. What if the government says to them, you need to shut down this steel mill, you use too much power? Maybe they get furloughed for a couple of weeks with pay. That's one thing. But what if entire industries or companies, Kelly, are shut off for a couple of months or longer? This EC proposal, European Commission proposal, is for 8 months, not for 8 days, not for 8 weeks, but for 8 months. This is the real deal, and it affects U.S. markets as well. A lot of people are saying, why is Sullivan over there? It's a long way away. It's not the U.S. It has to do with the U.S. because you have huge percentages of sales from S&P 500 companies, Kelly, that go to Europe. If the European economy takes a huge hit, if Germany, the fourth biggest economy, takes a hit because of energy, what do you think is going to happen with corporate earnings in the United States? They're going to take a hit. Small anecdote, by the way, things like this. Heat wave. Maybe you want to take your kids to the pool. A lot of community pools in Germany are closing because they can't afford the energy to run the water pumps.
Wow.
And they're talking in some towns about turning like basketball arenas into warming centers for elderly and vulnerable people because they're so worried they won't be able to afford their bills. Quick, they had to learn about the German energy system. It generally rotates every 12 months. So right now people aren't getting hit. But at the end of the year, it is very likely that people's energy bills will triple. Millions cannot afford to heat their homes, like in the UK. And I know it doesn't get a lot of attention, but far more people die of cold than of heat.
You know, I wonder as well, Brian, because a lot of this goes back, obviously, to Putin's war on Ukraine, is his long game, as I've read, it's suggested, to basically foment populist political reactions by when people realize these bills or can't take it in a few more months' time or what have you, and turn and maybe throw their governments out. I mean, that's why we're watching events in Italy so closely. So I don't know if there's any way to gauge the mood there, but do you hear people upset at their leadership over this?
Darn right. Absolutely. In fact, I mean, okay, so Boris Johnson out. Now, he had other issues. I get it. But let's be clear, 9.4% inflation, energy a part of it. That's part of the story. Mario Draghi hanging on by a thread in Italy. You could see other things happen. On the drive down here from Cologne to Frankfurt, by the way, the ECB decision is from here from Frankfurt tomorrow. Steve Leisman will be hitting that. We spoke with a representative from another, not Germany, but another major EU bloc and their energy minister's office. And I'm going to tell you this much. What they said was they think Putin's goal is to fracture the EU using energy as the wedge. Basically get every nation to kind of say, yo, you know, we're sorry, Germany, but we're France or we're the Netherlands or we're Spain. And sort of it becomes this every country for itself type scenario,
sure,
driving that wedge in, using energy. Oh, and by the way, I'll say this, if you ask me to guess on what the outcome will be based on every conversation I've had, and there's other reports too, I think the flow does restart tomorrow, probably not more than 20%. Putin kind of said as much in Iran overnight, by the way. And he started talking about Nord Stream 2. Like, in other words, well, Nord Stream 1's got problems. Maybe you need Nord Stream 2, which is, done, but has never been activated.
Right.
He's playing a lot of games here, Kelly, a lot of games.
Well, I'm very, very glad that you're there, Brian. We really appreciate it. I know you'll be there for a few more days still, and there's a lot more to come, but it does help give us a sense of what's happening. Yeah. Brian Sullivan
Tomorrow
in Frankfurt for us today.
Good day.
Let's turn now to the investor angle.